Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Sword Art Online Alicization anime review. This one is going to be for episode 35, which is called Heartless Choice. And this was a fantastic episode. I really liked this one. Obviously the two big impassioned speeches from Yui and then Lisbeth were the highlights, but I think just in general, I think the episode accomplished a lot with the plot, the speeches the fact that they brought up, I think really a lot of the points that really connect this arc to like the entirety of SAO, and that this isn't just an arc, it's like the arc bringing everything together, and that's why Yui's speech was so important to get across, SAO, Kaiba making SAO, and then like obviously in the ALO arc, ultimately the seed being the key sort of object kind of coming out of that, the seed setting up GGO and ALO with SAO elements in it, and then building all the way up to this and AI and this sort of dream for artificial intelligence, and like along the way hitting stuff like Sleeping Nights and the other applications of VR, and then Lisbeth hitting home the more kind of human side to all of this, and the what I think is ultimately one of SAO's main themes of just those who can and those who can't see the virtual world as being real, basically. And that's always been like a trait with Kirito, and it's probably one of his strongest ones within this series, is that he has absolutely no problem just immediately accepting artificial floodlights as being actual people. And he also feels that way about like NPCs. Like you go back to like the first arc, the Aincrad arc, and like Asuna and Kirito have like an argument over it. Like, she initially has a perspective of, just use the NPCs, kind of lure the monsters into town, and he disagrees with that. And I think it just came together so well that if you hadn't been sort of keeping track of the themes in your mind, this was the episode that really brought it together. And I just thought it was so fantastically done with those two emotional speeches. The fact that Yui is the one delivering this information at first, and is herself getting emotional, given that she is like the opposite type of AI to Alice, and she is talking about the hopes and this being the culmination of everything, SAO, the seed, building up to Underworld, and the creation of ultimately an ALICE AI. And the progress you've seen with her as a character, Yui, going from being very much just like a kind of slightly changed program to being truly a character of her own because of the close connection to Kirito, Asuna, and the rest of the group. The fact that she's maybe kind of wondering, like, can I actually convince them? And before, she's talked about how like her emotions are sort of programmed, and like she sort of times them to like get points across, but here it was kind of clear it was real emotion, and she got them invested in what she was talking about. And obviously at this point I think it's important to take the break to just focus in on what like Yui is trying to affect here, and that is that we get the plot point from the Dark Territory side of things, that one in the game, Vector right now is sending the Pugilist and the Dark Knight across the chasm. Basically, he just has them do this super risky ploy that this close to the enemy, do this really slow process of setting ropes across and having people just crawl over. People are just falling in all over the place, and then of course Bercoli makes the decision that they have to make this choice, and like, it's war, we have to do this now, there's no room for debate or kind of morals over this, so they have to use this gift of an opportunity of like they're taking a crazy risky strategy. So there was an impact to that of just like this is maybe a little much in a way of like seeing Asuna, Alice, Renly, all these characters just cutting down those ropes as they're sort of helplessly just falling into the ravine, and you see Iskon like just enraged. Like, he has to obey this order, but he's urging and hoping that all of those fighters get across. And ultimately, you see his frustration boil over, and because of the way the Dark Territory works, that seal of the right eye that they're teasing, what he's got nothing to do with taboo indexes. So the conflict within him is disobeying Vecta. That's the Dark Territory sort of imperative, that you have to obey the strongest, and that is Vecta. So his seal sort of beginning to activate is teasing him going against Vecta's orders. And especially now that Vecta was ultimately just using this as a bit of a, stall them, like sacrifice everyone to stall them. He just sees the Dark Territory soldiers as not being as close to becoming ALICEs as the human territory side of things, and is like, they're not good enough. So let's bring in some actual players, and this is where Critter as the kind of enemy tech comes into play. The time acceleration between the game and the real world is down to 1, so they're one and the same. But interestingly, Higa and the others haven't actually realized this yet until a plot point in this episode. But the point here is that this now allows other people to enter the game, and Critter puts out this thing of like, beta test, basically, super new VR game, none of these restrictions like all the other games. This is super violent. You're going up against other human players, no restrictions on like the pain sensors and stuff like this. He sends it out to American players at like peak American sort of game playing times, and this is the thing. They're all going to log into this beta as basically Dark Knights and be real players, so be able to sort of counter the, as Vecta kind of pointed out, the ingenuity basically of the better, superior human forces. And this will be the big turning point, because they're just immediately getting reinforcements out of nowhere. It's the most clear-cut example of like real world sort of coming in. And so the episode sort of ending on that note was really, really cool to see. Now, of course, I think a lot of people are going to be, over the next few episodes, bringing up the point of like, this voice acting where the voice actor has to actually speak English to portray an American character, because we're getting into actual like real life kind of nation stuff here. Not great, in that you do sort of question, like, was there really absolutely no option to bring in like a Native American speaker just to do this role? But you accept that there are sometimes limitations, so you have to have these things. It's a little bit clunky, but the point, I suppose, is gotten across just with the fact that you do have English in a Japanese show. So the point came across pretty clearly, of just like very clearly, like it's American players invested in this game. They're not like villains really, but they're playing the role of that, and like Vecta is using the sort of the passion of gamers, to play a new game, to fight his battles for him. So it's a very clever idea to use just other game players basically as the villains, and it lead to this moment of like Lisbeth has to inspire everyone else to fight against them, and it is just like all humans fighting each other, and there's a brutality to it. There's a lack of clear information coming from all sides, but that's what makes it so interesting and complicated. And I think it's super well done. And so it's at this point, this is what Yui sees. This is why she goes to the group to get them invested in this, and gives her big speech about this is about protecting what has been created in this entire journey from SAO all the way up to here, saving the AIs created in this. And again, they bring up the point of like, even Wrath is planning to ultimately misuse the results of this project by putting them in Japanese military vehicles and so on. And of course, the enemy has just as bad intents. So there is this core of like, well, kind of Kikuoka is sort of on our side. We also don't want him to come out of this with Alice either. We want, Kirito, Asuna, our group basically, to be the ones to kind of gain control of Alice and kind of kind of do things responsibly in a way with bringing her into the real world. So some great points being brought up here, and I love that this is the episode that really starts to connect everything together in such a really profound way. And so it obviously builds to the idea of like, what do we do? How do we combat this? Do we just try and put out misinformation? Oh no, that probably won't work. Oh, we'll just get just as many Japanese players in, but tell them the right story. No, that's not going to work because of how this is taking place. It's like super kind of early in the morning in Japan. No one's up really, whereas it's peak game playing time in America. So they're just going to have so much more users. So we'll counter the sort of mid-range beta accounts that they're using with converting all of our characters' accounts into being Underworld accounts. So they'll at least have the sort of ability gear advantage, even if they don't have the numbers advantage. It's the exact sort of storytelling you want for this sort of thing, is immediate setup for our more skilled characters going in and being able to sort of showcase themselves by taking out hordes of basically the enemy. So lots of good setup here, but they need more than just their immediate group. So we have the setup on the other side of things of Yui calling specifically Suguha and Sinon to go to the other Wrath office in Roppongi, I think it is, where it's revealed that there are two Underworld kind of soul translators there. So very clearly the setup here, like obviously know from the light novel, but I don't want to spoil it for you guys, that okay, the way those two are going in is different than everyone else, in that they're obviously being logged in with other super user accounts, whereas everyone else is sort of doing a character conversion. So that's going to be a very, very cool reveal. If you've been paying attention to sort of the whole Asuna went into Stacia, there's just some connections you can make to sort of figure out like what way it's going to work with Lifa and Sinon. But I love the setup on this side of things for sure. And this obviously prompts then Lisbeth to make her big speech in front of all of the ALO players, because that's the game that they play sort of every day. So these are the people to get on their side, and it's such a powerful speech. Like it was amazing in the light novel reading this, but the performance here was just fantastic. The emotion, they bring the music in. I honestly got kind of chills kind of listening to it. It was so well done. And I'm so excited to see this done in the English dub. I think it's just going to have all the more impact there. Huge moment here of like Lisbeth getting such a great moment and kind of being the perfect character of the characters you had sort of there to deliver this. Of course, starting off with the idea of just, will you help us with this, to stop the American players coming in, who will be killing humans basically in all of this, in that, when the Underworldians die, they're gone. So they are trying to save lives in all of this, and it's about our SAO players, our group is convinced, like they get it. They all have the same view of this as Kirito. Same can't be said for every other ALO player that we've encountered. They don't have the experience necessarily to understand sort of the magnitude of this, and so you have the players just kind of basically bringing up the idea of, kind of, why should I risk my account that I spent all this time building up? All these risks that you're talking about. Why should I fight for them or you? And they of course bring up the idea of like, you're SAO players, you're sort of famous in the real world, so you're just kind of doing this to sort of almost like be heroes again, and this criticism kind of coming against them for asking everyone else to do this because they're SAO players. And it seems like her appeal has failed, that they're not going to listen, that they may have to go in without everyone. Even like our more noted characters who would seemingly be on side, like Sakuya and Alicia, are kind of like, they have their doubts too. And it's she remembers Kirito, remembers the SAO experience, her time with her friends, and just kind of opens up about the whole SAO survivor thing of like, yeah, like all of us have a tendency to mix real world and reality, but like it's because like we all go to the same school. We're sort of watched basically. We're put on lists as being like potential criminals. Like that's the way they treat us. Some people are forced to have, to take medication when they don't really need it, and they have to go all this sort of, psychological evaluation and so on. But she eventually gets to those key points of basically, this is real. Like, everyone sort of insults gamers for like not doing anything, but this is real. Like you play this game because you care about what's here. We care about that too. And if you do care, you'll care about what's going on here, and this will be this way to sort of prove it, and we will accomplish something here. Because again, like this is a plot where like the governments are getting involved. They confirm that like the U.S. military is involved, and all this stuff. Like this would be a kind of huge like news story when this eventually breaks, like what exactly has happened. The idea of like gamers organizing things to basically save artificial kind of beings. It's just it's a great speech, and how it's written, how it links into things, and the emotion from her as it comes out. And she does eventually like inspire people to get invested in that. Everyone begins to just understand, like, we don't know the full story about the SAO survivors, and she just gets to some very, very strong points. And in the end, her ultimate point is effectively that this is reality right here. We're in a game, but we're at this like meeting. Like the amount of people here, it is a world. It's a world we all care about. Like the reason they're kind of concerned about, in a way, like the loss of their character accounts is kind of proof that they care about this world. And eventually it just leaves on that note of like, has she done enough to convince them? And it seems like she has. And there's even a little bit of a tease of a tie-in to the movie Ordinal Scale. So some really, really fun stuff in all of this. And yeah, just great episode, ending with the arrival of the American players, just as it seems like, the team here has kind of mopped up most of the people on the ropes. So the question, of course, is obviously like, do the American players are going to go into this not really knowing the scope of this war? They're basically just there to cause complete chaos. They're going to be attacking everyone. In terms of like they're coming in, they're new to this game. Are they going to know the difference between who's on their side, who's not on their side? And there's going to be some confusion in all of this. And yeah, as I said, it just gets kind of bigger and bigger from here. As we of course reach the sort of middle point of War of the Underworld. They're obviously going to be building up to sort of like the mid-season finale type thing. So some good stuff coming up. But yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite episodes of Alicization. Potentially actually one of my favorite episodes of Sword Art Online overall. That's how strong I felt, at least especially the two speeches were, but also just the plot point of like bringing more players into this, and the confusion, the conflict. It's really, really good. But yeah, they're my thoughts on this episode of Sword Art Online Alicization. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.